Are you exhausted from chasing a life that always feels one step out of reach? What if the secret to getting everything you want isn't forcing it, but finally letting go? Welcome to the Stoic path. Relax your mind, release your anxiety, and watch the world unfold before you. We live in a world that constantly demands our movement. From the moment you wake up, a subtle but relentless pressure settles on your chest, a whispering anxiety that tells you that you are not doing enough, that you are falling behind, and that the things you desperately want out of life are slipping through your fingers. We are taught that to manifest our dreams, we must hustle, grind, and grip the steering wheel of life until our knuckles turn white. We believe that if we just worry enough, plan enough, and stress enough, we can somehow manipulate the universe into giving us the wealth, the love, and the peace we crave. But consider how this strategy has worked out for you so far. Has the constant anxiety brought you closer to your goals, or has it merely exhausted your spirit? Has gripping the wheel tightly stopped the storms from coming, or has it only made the bumps in the road feel more violent? The Stoics, the ancient philosophers of Greece and Rome, understood a profound paradox of human existence. The harder you desperately chase something, the further it runs away. They recognized that true power and true manifestation begins not with grasping, but with an open hand. To understand how to relax your mind and bring about the life you desire, we must first travel back in time, over 2,000 years ago, to the turbulent waters of the Mediterranean Sea. Imagine a man named Zeno of Citium. Zeno was a wealthy merchant, a man who had built his life on the accumulation of rare and valuable goods. His specialty was Tyrian purple dye, a substance so expensive and difficult to produce that it was reserved almost exclusively for royalty. Zeno's identity, his future, and his peace of mind were entirely wrapped up in the cargo hold of his ship. He was, in modern terms, a man who had successfully manifested wealth through hard work and careful planning. But the sea does not care about our plans. On a voyage across the Mediterranean, a violent storm descended upon Zeno's ship. The sky darkened, the wind howled with terrifying ferocity, and the waves battered the wooden hull until it shattered. In a matter of hours, everything Zeno owned, his precious purple dye, his fortune, his life's work, sank to the dark, unforgiving bottom of the ocean. Zeno barely survived, washing up on the shores of Piraeus near Athens, completely destitute. He was a shipwrecked man, stripped of his status, his money, and his envisioned future. In our modern society, this is the ultimate nightmare. This is the scenario we spend our entire lives worrying about, losing it all. By all conventional logic, Zeno should have been destroyed by this event. He should have spent the rest of his life cursed by bitterness, paralyzed by anxiety, and consumed by the tragedy of what he had lost. Instead, Zeno wandered into Athens, walked into a bookstore, and began reading about philosophy. He found a teacher named Crates, a Cynic philosopher, and began to study the nature of the human mind, the universe, and the true source of happiness. From the ashes of his ruined life, Zeno founded a school of thought that would change the world, Stoicism. Reflecting on his disaster years later, Zeno did not express anger at the universe. Instead, he famously declared, "I made a prosperous voyage when I suffered shipwreck." How is it possible for a man to lose everything and claim it was the best thing that ever happened to him? Because the shipwreck shattered Zeno's ultimate illusion, the illusion of control. Before the storm, Zeno believed his peace of mind came from his wealth. After the storm, he realized that true wealth, the kind that cannot be sunk by a wave or stolen by a thief, resides entirely within the mind. The illusion of control. This is the first secret to relaxing your mind and manifesting the life you want. You must profoundly and completely accept what you can control and what you cannot. The great Stoic, slave-turned philosopher, Epictetus, called this the dichotomy of control. He opened his famous handbook, the Enchiridion, with this piercing truth. Some things are in our control and others not. Things in our control are opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion, and in a word, whatever are our own actions. Things not in our control are body, property, reputation, command, and in one word, whatever are not our own actions. Read those words again. Let them wash over your anxious mind. The vast majority of the things you are currently stressing about, the outcome of a job interview, the behavior of your romantic partner, the fluctuations of the economy, the opinions of your peers, the viral success of a project, are ultimately outside of your direct control. When you try to control the uncontrollable, you are like a person trying to command the weather. You stand in the rain, screaming at the clouds to stop pouring, growing increasingly frustrated and exhausted when they don't listen. Your anxiety is the gap between how you demand the world to be and how the world actually is. To relax your mind, you must mentally draw a hard line in the sand. On one side is the external world, the economy, the traffic, the past, the future, and the actions of others. You must learn to look at this side and say, "This is not up to me." On the other side is your internal world, your beliefs, your values, your work ethic, your responses to adversity, and your character. This is your domain. This is the only place where your energy actually matters. When you shift your focus entirely to your internal world, a miraculous transformation occurs. The heavy burden of expectation falls off your shoulders. You stop playing the role of the general manager of the universe. You are no longer exhausted by the impossible task of ensuring everything goes exactly to your plan. You become like a master gardener. A gardener cannot force a seed to sprout. They cannot control the amount of sunshine the season brings, nor can they prevent an unexpected frost. If the gardener obsesses over the harvest, they will live in constant anxiety. But a Stoic gardener relaxes. They focus only on what is within their power, preparing the soil, watering the ground, pulling the weeds, and planting the seeds with care. They do the work impeccably, and then, crucially, they let the universe do the rest. If you want to manifest everything you want, you must first stop desperately needing it to happen exactly as you envisioned. You must release the tight, suffocating grip you have on your future. Let the purple dye sink. Let the storm pass. Relinquish the illusion of control, and you will immediately feel a profound stillness return to your mind. Once you have drawn the line between what you can and cannot control, you will find yourself standing in a new, quiet space. But the human mind is restless. Even when we logically understand that we cannot control the external world, our emotions often lag behind. We still feel the sting of disappointment when things don't go our way. We still feel the pang of rejection, the fear of missing out, and the lingering shadow of regret. To truly relax the mind on a permanent basis, the Stoics developed a practice that goes far beyond mere acceptance. Acceptance is passive. It is a resignation to the facts. The Stoics pushed for something much more radical, much more powerful. They pushed for a passionate embrace of whatever happens. Centuries after Zeno, this concept found its ultimate expression in the writings of a man who held more power than anyone else on earth. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of the Roman Empire. If anyone had a reason to be stressed, it was Marcus. During his reign, he faced a relentless cascade of catastrophes. The empire was attacked by barbarian tribes on multiple borders. The Antonine Plague, a devastating pandemic, swept through Rome, killing millions and decimating the army. The imperial treasury was depleted. To make matters worse, his most trusted general, Avidius Cassius, betrayed him and attempted to usurp the throne, starting a civil war. Marcus Aurelius carried the weight of the known world on his shoulders. He was surrounded by chaos, death, and betrayal. Yet, late at night, in his military tent on the freezing frontiers of Germania, he would sit by the light of a flickering oil lamp and write in his private journal, which we now know as Meditations. He did not write to complain. He did not write to manifest a magical rescue from his problems. He wrote to relax his mind. He wrote to remind himself of the profound Stoic doctrine that Friedrich Nietzsche would later coin as amor fati, a love of one's fate. Marcus wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." Redefining manifestation through amor fati, modern manifestation culture often sells a very fragile philosophy. It tells you that to attract good things, you must only think positive thoughts. It suggests that if you experience a setback, you have somehow failed to vibrate at the right frequency, or that you attracted negativity through your own doubts. This creates a terrifying loop of anxiety. You become afraid of your own mind. You try to forcefully suppress negative emotions and forcefully visualize positive outcomes, creating an immense amount of internal friction. Stoic manifestation is entirely different. It is robust. It is unbreakable. The Stoic does not try to magically alter reality through thought alone. The Stoic realizes that the ultimate manifestation is becoming a person whom reality cannot destroy. When you practice amor fati, you stop asking the universe to give you an easy life. You stop praying for the storms to avoid you. Instead, you say, "Bring me whatever you will, and I will use it to build my character." Imagine how relaxed your mind becomes when you adopt this perspective. If you land your dream job, you say, "This is wonderful. I will use this opportunity to practice hard work, gratitude, and leadership." But what if you get fired from that job? What if the universe hands you a seemingly terrible fate? The Stoic does not break down in despair. The Stoic looks at the termination letter and says, "This is wonderful. I will use this opportunity to practice resilience, humility, and adaptability." You become the blazing fire Marcus Aurelius spoke of. A small, weak candle is easily blown out by a gust of wind. The candle prays for a calm, windless day, but a roaring, massive bonfire welcomes the wind. The wind feeds the fire, everything thrown into the bonfire, logs, trash, old furniture, dried leaves, is consumed and turned into more heat, more flame, more brightness. When you relax your mind and embrace amor fati, you stop resisting reality. Resistance is the true source of your anxiety. Your stress does not come from what is happening to you. It comes from your mind screaming, "This shouldn't be happening. This isn't what I planned." To manifest everything you want, you must paradoxically become okay with not getting it. You must unclench your fists. Think of a time when you desperately wanted someone to like you, a romantic interest or a potential friend. When you desperately needed their validation, how did you act? You were likely tense, unnatural, overbearing, and anxious. You overthought every text message. You analyzed their every glance. And what was the result? That needy, grasping energy usually pushes people away. But think of a time when you were completely comfortable with yourself, when you didn't need anything from anyone. You were relaxed, authentic, spontaneous, and joyful. In that state of deep internal stillness, you became incredibly magnetic. People were naturally drawn to you. You manifested beautiful connections precisely because you stopped desperately trying to force them. This principle applies to wealth, career success, and health. When you operate from a place of scarcity and desperate need, your vision narrows. You make poor, impulsive decisions driven by fear. You burn out. But when you cultivate the stillness within, when you love your fate exactly as it unfolds, you tap into a state of flow. Your mind is clear. You can see opportunities that others miss because they are blinded by panic. You can make calm, rational decisions. You become a person who is fundamentally complete on your own. And paradoxically, that is the exact type of person to whom the universe seems to hand its greatest rewards. At this point, a critical misunderstanding often arises. If we are to accept our fate, let go of the illusion of control, and stop desperately grasping for what we want, does that mean we just sit on the couch and do nothing? Does Stoicism teach us to be passive, ambitionless monks who simply let life happen to them? Absolutely not. The Stoics were statesmen, generals, merchants, and writers. They were highly active, ambitious, and productive members of society. They wanted good health, loving families, financial security, and a functioning republic. But they pursued these things with a fundamentally different psychological framework than the average person. They mastered the art of action without attachment. To understand how to manifest greatness without losing your peace of mind, we must look at one of the most beautiful and profound metaphors in Stoic philosophy, famously articulated by the philosopher Antipater of Tarsus, and later recorded by the Roman statesman Cicero, the metaphor of the Stoic archer. The metaphor of the archer. Close your eyes and visualize a master archer standing in an open field, preparing to shoot at a target 100 yards away. This archer is a professional. They have trained for decades. They do everything within their power to ensure a perfect shot. They meticulously select the straightest arrow from their quiver. They carefully string their bow, checking the tension of the wood. They study the environment, noting the direction of the wind and the glare of the sun. They plant their feet firmly into the earth, establishing a perfect, balanced stance. They draw the bowstring back to their cheek, control their breathing to slow their heart rate, and aim with laser-like focus at the very center of the bullseye. Up until this exact microsecond, the archer is exerting immense effort. They are utilizing their skills, their logic, and their willpower. They care deeply about doing a good job. But then, the archer releases the bowstring. The arrow flies into the air. In that precise moment, a radical shift occurs in the archer's mind. The millisecond the arrow leaves the bow, the master archer surrenders completely. Why? Because the arrow is no longer in their control. A sudden gust of wind could sweep across the field and blow the arrow off course. A dog could run in front of the target. The wood of the arrow could unexpectedly splinter mid-flight. The target itself could be moved. The archer knows that hitting the bullseye is an external outcome, and therefore it is subject to the whims of fortune, chance, and the universe. If the archer's entire sense of self-worth and happiness is tied to hitting the target, they will live in a state of chronic anxiety every time the arrow is in the air. They will be crushed by forces outside their control. But the Stoic archer defines success differently. To the Stoic, success is not hitting the target. Success is having shot well. The goal is the internal process, not the external result. The archer's intention is to do absolutely everything in their power right up until the point of release, and then gracefully accept whatever happens next. The secret to relaxed manifestation. This is the ultimate secret to manifesting what you want in life. You must pull the bowstring with everything you have, but release the arrow with total surrender. How does this look in your daily life? In your career, you want a promotion. The modern, anxious way is to obsess over getting the title, brown-nosing the boss, and losing sleep over whether your rival will beat you to it. The Stoic archer's way is to focus entirely on being an exceptional employee. You upskill yourself, you work with integrity, you help your team, you communicate clearly, and you formally present your case for the promotion. You draw the bow perfectly. But the decision of the executives? That is the wind. It is out of your hands. If you get it, wonderful. If you don't, you remain undisturbed, knowing you executed your part flawlessly. In your relationships, you want to find a deeply loving partner. The anxious way is to desperately swipe on dating apps, bend over backwards to please people who don't respect you, and feel utterly broken after a rejection. The Stoic archer's way is to focus on becoming the kind of person you would want to date. You cultivate kindness, emotional intelligence, physical health, and a fulfilling, independent life. You put yourself out there. You draw the bow. But whether a specific person chooses to love you back, that is out of your control. You release the arrow and accept their choice without losing your internal peace. When you adopt the mindset of the Stoic archer, something magical happens to your performance. Because you are no longer terrified of missing the target, your performance anxiety evaporates. Imposter syndrome fades away. The fear of failure loses its fangs. Think about the times you have performed at your absolute best, in a sport, an artistic endeavor, or a conversation. You were likely in a state of flow. You weren't thinking about the end result. You were completely absorbed in the present moment, totally engaged in the process. You were relaxed. A tight, anxious mind makes mistakes. It overcorrects. It chokes under pressure. A relaxed, stoic mind is fluid, adaptable, and sharp. By detaching from the outcome, you ironically increase the probability of achieving that outcome. You manifest success because you have removed the internal resistance and desperation that usually sabotage it. The concept of preferred indifference. To fully integrate this, you must understand how the Stoics categorized the things we want. They did not say that wealth, health, and success are evil. They called them preferred indifference. It is completely natural to prefer to be wealthy rather than poor. It is natural to prefer health over sickness and respect over mockery. But the Stoic realizes these things are indifferent to their ultimate moral character and their deepest internal happiness. You can be a good, honorable, and happy person, whether you are driving a luxury car or riding a bicycle. The car is a preferred indifferent. When you treat your goals as preferred indifference, you strip them of their power over you. You look at your manifestation board, your list of goals and your dreams, and you say, I prefer to achieve these things. I will draw my bow and aim for them with skill and determination. But if the wind blows my arrow astray, I will not be broken. I am already whole. I am already complete. This is the ultimate paradox of the universe. When you stop needing the world to give you what you want, the world suddenly seems eager to lay its treasures at your feet. You become unbothered, unstoppable, and deeply at peace. The mind relaxes, the anxiety clears, and you finally realize that the power to manifest a beautiful life was never out there in the chaotic winds of the world. It was always resting quietly in your own hands, waiting for you to simply let go. Modern manifestation culture often preaches a doctrine of absolute, toxic positivity. It tells us that our minds are incredibly fragile, and that entertaining even a single negative thought will somehow attract disaster into our lives. We are told to aggressively visualize our success, to build vision boards filled with mansions and sports cars, and to violently push away any lingering doubts. But what happens when you force yourself to only think positive thoughts? You develop a deep, paralyzing phobia of negativity. You begin to walk on eggshells within your own mind. The irony is that by desperately trying to avoid thinking about your fears, you give them immense power over you. They become monsters lurking in the shadows of your subconscious, keeping your nervous system in a constant, low-grade state of fight or flight. You cannot relax your mind if you are terrified of what might happen if you fail. The Stoics approached the mind from the exact opposite direction. They did not run from the shadows, they walked straight into them with a torch. To manifest true confidence, the Stoics practiced a profound psychological exercise called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Instead of constantly visualizing an ideal, perfect future, the Stoics actively and intentionally visualized the worst-case scenarios. Consider the life of Lucius Annaeus Seneca, one of the most prominent Stoic philosophers. Seneca was not a monk living in a cave. He was a statesman, a brilliant playwright, and for a time, the wealthiest man in the entire Roman Empire. He had sprawling estates, political power, and unimaginable luxury. By all modern standards, he had manifested it all. Yet Seneca knew that comfort breeds fragility. He knew that the more you have, the more terrified you become of losing it. To keep his mind sharp, relaxed, and immune to anxiety, Seneca did something radical. Every month, for a few days, the richest man in Rome would leave his palatial estates. He would strip off his fine silk robes and put on the rough, scratchy tunic of a peasant. He would leave behind his gourmet meals and eat only the cheapest, stalest bread. He would sleep on the hard, cold ground instead of a feathered bed. Seneca was practicing premeditatio malorum in the physical realm. He was intentionally exposing himself to poverty, the very thing most wealthy men spent their entire lives violently fearing. And as he sat on the cold floor, eating dry bread, he would ask himself a simple, life-changing question. Is this the condition that I feared? By looking his ultimate fear directly in the eyes, Seneca destroyed its power. He realized that even if the emperor stripped him of his wealth, even if he lost his status and his properties, he would still survive. He would still have his mind, his virtue, and his ability to reason. The monster in the dark was just a shadow. When you practice premeditatio malorum, you immunize yourself against anxiety. Think about the thing you are currently stressing over. Perhaps you are trying to manifest a successful business, and you are terrified of going bankrupt. Instead of just visualizing the millions you want to make, take 5 minutes to vividly imagine losing it all. Imagine having to close the doors of your business. Imagine having to tell your friends that you failed. Imagine having to move out of your house and into a tiny, cramped apartment. Let the feelings of embarrassment and failure wash over you. And then, take a deep breath and look around that imaginary tiny apartment. You are still breathing. You still have your intellect. You still have your capacity to love. You have not been destroyed. You have merely been reset. You look at that worst-case scenario and you say to yourself, is this what I was so terrified of? I can survive this. I can rebuild from this. The psychological relief this provides is staggering. When you truly realize that you can survive the worst-case scenario, the desperate, gripping fear evaporates. You no longer need to violently protect your dreams. You can simply pursue them. This is the secret to fearless manifestation. The person who is terrified of failing will always play small. They will second-guess their decisions. They will act out of desperation, and they will sabotage their own success because their mind is clouded by panic. But the person who has already mentally visited the worst-case scenario and made peace with it becomes incredibly dangerous to the status quo. They take bold risks. They speak their truth. They negotiate with power, not with neediness. Because they are not afraid of losing, they project an aura of unshakable confidence. When you stop fearing the collapse of your dreams, you finally give yourself the mental space necessary to actually build them. You relax your mind, and in doing so, you unlock a level of focus and clarity that desperation could never achieve. Even after we have learned to let go of control, embrace our fate, focus on our actions, and face our fears, there is one final insidious trap that causes our minds to suffer. It is the ultimate barrier to relaxing your mind and manifesting a life of peace, the trap of the ego. When we are stressed, anxious, and desperately trying to force a specific outcome into existence, we become entirely self-absorbed. Our vision narrows. The universe shrinks until it seems to revolve entirely around our specific, momentary problems. A delayed promotion, an unreturned text message, a sudden financial loss, or a perceived slight from a colleague. These things balloon in our minds until they feel like catastrophic events of cosmic proportions. We suffer deeply because we believe our momentary discomfort is the absolute center of reality. We become prisoners in a cell built by our own localized panic. To break out of this prison and achieve the ultimate state of relaxation, the Stoics developed a meditative practice designed to shatter the ego and reconnect the mind to the vast, awe-inspiring scale of the universe. They called it the view from above. Marcus Aurelius, despite being the emperor of the known world, knew how easily the ego could poison the mind. He was surrounded by sycophants who told him he was a god, and simultaneously besieged by betrayals, plagues, and endless wars that threatened to tear his sanity apart. To stay grounded, to keep his mind relaxed and his decisions clear, he constantly reminded himself of his own cosmic insignificance. He practiced the art of zooming out. Right now, wherever you are sitting or standing, try this ancient practice. Close your eyes and visualize yourself in this exact moment. See your body. Notice the furrowed brow, the shallow breathing, the tension sitting heavily in your neck and shoulders. Acknowledge the swirling anxieties and the desperate desires bouncing around inside your head. Now, imagine your perspective detaching from your physical body. Imagine it floating upward, passing silently through the ceiling of the room. Look down at the building you are in. See the street you live on. Watch the cars passing by, driven by people who are completely unaware of your anxieties, wrapped up in their own private dramas. Keep floating upward. The higher you go, the quieter the noise of your life becomes. See your entire city spread out below you. Millions of people are going about their day. In that city right now, someone is being born, and someone is taking their final breath. Someone is falling madly in love, and someone is having their heart utterly broken. Someone has just lost their entire fortune, and an underdog has just inherited a life-changing opportunity. Every single one of those millions of people has a mind filled with desires, fears, and desperate hopes, exactly like yours. Float higher still. See the topography of your country, the sweeping plains, the jagged mountains, the snaking rivers that have flowed for millennia before you arrived, and will flow for millennia after you leave. See the entire continent. Now, pull back into the freezing ink of space until you see the Earth as a whole. Look at that beautiful, fragile blue marble spinning silently in the vast, boundless void. Look closely at that tiny blue dot. Every king and every peasant, every billionaire and every beggar, every monumental success and every crushing failure in the entire history of humanity has happened right there. Alexander the Great's conquests, the fall of Rome, the rise of modern empires, all of it is just a microscopic flutter of activity on a speck of dust suspended in a sunbeam. Your life, your daily anxieties, your desperate need to manifest that specific job, that particular house, or that specific person's validation are but a momentary blink in the vast, incomprehensible span of eternity. As Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself in his private journals, think of the whole universe of matter and how small your share. Think about the expanse of time and how brief, almost momentary, the part marked for you. Think of the workings of fate and how infinitesimal your role. This practice is not meant to make you feel depressed, insignificant, or nihilistic. Quite the opposite. It is meant to set you absolutely free. When you take the view from above, you realize the supreme absurdity of your anxiety. Why are you gripping the steering wheel of life so tightly that your hands bleed? Why are you losing sleep over a minor setback in your career or a social rejection? The universe has been expanding, evolving, and organizing itself for billions of years without your anxious, micromanaging supervision. It will continue to do so long after you and everyone you know have returned to the dust. This profound realization leads to one of the most beautiful concepts in Stoic philosophy: sympathia. Sympathia is the deep, undeniable interconnectedness of all things. The Stoics did not view themselves merely as citizens of Rome or Athens. They viewed themselves as cosmopolitans, citizens of the cosmos. They believed the universe was not a chaotic accident, but a living, breathing entity driven by logos, a rational, divine, and beautiful order. Everything that happens to you happens for a reason within the grand machinery of this cosmos. You are not a separate, isolated ego, fighting a lonely war against a hostile, uncaring universe. You are a vital cell within a massive organism. You are a single, necessary thread woven into an infinitely complex and beautiful tapestry. When modern manifestation culture tells you to create your own reality, it often implies a deeply arrogant idea: that your ego should dictate terms to the universe. It suggests that your tiny, limited, human perspective knows what is best for the grand design. But the Stoic knows better. The Stoic understands that demanding the universe bend to your specific whims is like a single drop of water trying to command the tides of the ocean. The Stoic does not try to bend the universe to their will. The Stoic seeks to align their will with the universe. Imagine you are a musician playing an instrument in a massive cosmic orchestra. True manifestation is not standing up in the middle of a symphony and demanding that all other musicians stop playing so they can listen to your improvised solo. If you do that, you create dissonance, chaos, and frustration. True manifestation is mastering your instrument. It is reading the sheet music provided to you by fate and playing your part flawlessly, in perfect harmony with the thousands of other instruments around you. Sometimes the Logos hands you a part in the symphony that is joyful, triumphant, and loud. When wealth, success, and love flow into your life, play that part beautifully. Let the music soar. But sometimes the sheet music calls for your part to be sorrowful, quiet, or requires you to step back completely and let someone else shine. Sometimes you are asked to play the notes of grief, loss, or starting over from nothing. You must learn to play those quiet, difficult notes beautifully too. Because without the quiet moments, without the descent, the crescendo of the symphony has no meaning. When you realize you are part of sympathia, the desperate, clawing need to force outcomes vanishes. You begin to trust the logos. You realize that a closed door is not a tragedy. It is simply the universe redirecting your melody. The relationship that ended, the business that went bankrupt, the grand opportunity that slipped through your fingers, these were not failures of your manifestation abilities. They were simply scenes in a sprawling, multi-act play for which you do not have the full script. You relax your mind by surrendering to the profound, unfathomable intelligence of the whole. You stop swimming exhaustedly against the raging current of the river and finally flip onto your back, allowing the water to carry you where you are meant to go. When you reach this state of surrender, your mind becomes perfectly clear, perfectly relaxed, and deeply, quietly powerful. You have given up the draining illusion of control. You have embraced whatever fate brings to your door. You take highly virtuous, focused action, but you remain entirely unattached to the results. You have faced your worst fears in the dark and realized they have no teeth, and you understand your exact place in the vast, beautiful tapestry of existence. You no longer need to frantically chase the things you want, because in this state of profound, unshakable Stoic stillness, you have already manifested the greatest, most valuable treasure a human being can ever possess, a mind that cannot be disturbed by the world. And here is the beautiful irony of the universe. It is only when you finally stop needing the world to give you everything, when you become utterly complete and at peace within yourself, that the world finally opens its hands and pours its abundance at your feet. The true secret to manifesting your desires is not found in frantic hustle or desperate wishing, but in the quiet power of a relaxed mind. By surrendering the illusion of control, embracing your fate, and acting with virtue, you become unstoppable. If this Stoic journey brought you peace, please hit the like button, share this video with someone who needs a mental reset, and subscribe to the channel for more ancient wisdom. The universe is waiting. Let go and let it in.